Hello, dreamers of all ages, and welcome to Catch Us at the Castle.
Hey guys, I'm Ed Pizza.
And I'm Steph Sweets. This is Catch Us at the Castle, and today we are discussing ride strategies for Walt Disney World. Everything you need to know to help you get the maximum rides in as possible. Ed, where are we going to start today? Which park do you want to start with?
Well, because Disney World is 4 different parks and a lot of the stuff happens beforehand, there's actually a couple of things that you need to consider when you're planning your trip. And, some of this, definitely gets into budget. And so we want to make sure that we cover folks that are working on a budget versus folks that may have a little bit more money to spend. But I would say top of our list is something that we talked about with Disneyland, which is making sure that you're using an accurate crowd calendar. I think the Disney World crowd calendars from folks like Touring Plans are relatively accurate. I think on the peak of peak days, they're very accurate. In some of the shoulder seasons, it can be a little bit more troublesome, but I think you're a big proponent of crowd calendars, as am I, just to get a sense of how busy it's actually going to be when you're there and how much you can get accomplished.
I totally agree on crowd calendars. I'm a big fan. Even as many times as I've been, the hundreds of times that I've been to all of the parks. Big fan of using crowd calendars for sure.
As far as park entry, things are a little bit different at Disney World and Disneyland. So if you're new to the world of Disney World versus Disneyland, or if you haven't been back in a while, things have changed. And so the newest and most current early access is called early theme park entry. And this is a 30-minute head start for guests of Disney hotels. And this is not specific to the type of hotel you're in. We'll talk a little bit more about access for deluxe resorts. But this is a 30-minute head start. It's not a carte blanche head start. We'll talk a little bit about it when we get into the individual parks. But, for example, at Magic Kingdom, you could only get access to Fantasyland and Tomorrowland in that early time. But there's still plenty of stuff that you could accomplish in that 30 minutes. The other way to get extra park access at Disney World is what's called Disney After Hours. These are select nights at the parks if you're staying in a Disney Deluxe property where you get extra time after the park closes. And the lines can really thin out for most of the rides. The most popular ones will still have a pretty decent line, lower than normal. Again, as I mentioned, this requires booking a deluxe resort, but there are a few, sneaky deluxe resorts that you might not be thinking of, such as Swan and Dolphin, where you can use hotel points to defray some of your costs. Between early theme park entry and Disney After Hours, it's 2 ways that you would plan ahead for your trip to make sure you've got access at times where lines may not be quite as long.
Yes. And one thing that I've learned recently, and this does change over the years, but it used to be a while ago that you absolutely wanted to avoid the Magic Kingdom the Magic Kingdom on a party day because those days were the crowdest days at those parks. That has definitely changed. And Magic Kingdom is empty on party days. When we were there recently, we were able to ride 7 rides within just a couple of hours because we went on a day, we went early entry, but we actually didn't get into any ride lines before park opening. So we would have been at park open with everybody else. And we were able to get 7 rides in. And the big key ones, we were able to do Tron. There were people that were actually getting off Tron and getting right back on because the lines were so low, which you will never see hardly ever at Tron. And so I definitely recommend hitting Magic Kingdom on a party day, even though you'll need to hop.
Yeah.
Or do something else in the evening somewhere else that's not in a park if you're not going to hop. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I haven't been back for a party this year, so I haven't had a chance to experience it yet. Glad to hear that that's not as bad as it used to be. The other thing to talk about before we talk about individual parks, this is part of your planning, is the lightning lane strategy. For folks who haven't been in a while, this is the system that replaced fast passes, and it's effectively a 2-tiered system. So you've got the lightning lane multi-pass, where you're buying access to get rides ahead of time throughout either A, an individual park, or B, multiple parks. And the pricing will vary based on time of year, which parks you want to go into, how many of them that you select. So, definitely be wary of that. In fact, they just passed through another price increase on Lightning Lane Multipass. Separately from that, you have individual Lightning Lanes that you can buy for specific rides. These are the most popular rides in the park. So think things like Tron Light Cycle Run, or Guardians of the Galaxy, or Rise of the Resistance, where you can buy a set pass. You're generally buying a time window for that as well. And so you can buy individual Lightning Lanes and you can buy multi, and those two will work together, and you'd set your individual Lightning Lane times around your multi passes or vice versa. The other thing about being on site for hotels is you do get early access to certain Lightning Lanes if you buy the Lightning Lane multi-pass. So there are a number of benefits to staying on site. We know it can be a lot more expensive. If this is a once-in-a-lifetime trip, it's certainly worth running the math on staying on site. If you have after-hours dates during your visit, that can be a huge key for a deluxe resort. And then also, obviously, getting some extra capacity to Lightning Lanes ahead of time if there's just one really important ride that you want to make sure that someone in your party needs to run. Steph, I'm curious. I've been an almost always guy for buying Lightning Lane multi. Are you typically buying it when you go in the parks, or is it situational for you?
It's definitely situational. I think if this is a once in a lifetime trip or even a once in a year trip, I think it's definitely worth buying Lightning Lanes. Someone like me that's going a lot more than once a year, I definitely am not buying it every single time I go. It depends on who's with me. If I have kids with me, family members with me, or if I'm just by myself and can navigate things. And I'm not worried about missing a ride too. Exactly that. If I'm there to ride rides and make sure I get it all in, I'm definitely spending the money for Lightning Lane.
Yeah, I mean, the cost can really add up. So, you're looking at, I think the newest price per person for multi-pass, and that's per day. So a multi-day trip, obviously family of 4, you're looking at almost $200 a day if you were going to bounce around to multiple parks. You can select for fewer parks, and that can help lower the price. And then individual Lightning Lane pricing, definitely varies, but you're looking at something in the range of $15 to $20 a ride in most cases for these popular rides. So again, prices can add up. In certain situations, virtual queues can also help you here, and we'll talk a little bit about that on a park-specific basis. But those are other ways that you can save some money if you're willing to get up early and hit the magic button at exactly the right time. So let's dig into individual parks. Let's start with Magic Kingdom, since this is a popular place to start. As we talked about with early entry, Fantasyland and Tomorrowland are the areas that are open during early park entry. For perspective here, that's rides like Peter Pan, Tron, and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. However, the thing to think about here is you probably want to avoid Tron because the ride itself doesn't open early. So all you're really doing is queuing up early. So if you're going to go early, I would say my strategy would be push for something like Peter Pan or Mine Train if those are on your list, knowing that more popular rides like Tiana are in parts of the park that are not open that early in the morning. So something to consider later on in the day. As of time of recording, Tiana is a Lightning Lane ride, so that's another possibility for you there. As far as strategy beyond that, the new Lightning Lane multi-pass system is not as user-friendly as the previous system, being able to quickly grab new rides and modify, but some of the same bones are there. So if you're going to buy multi-pass, my strategy is you want to grab a few rides early in the morning, 2 of your rides, and so you can use those up and refill them with other slots throughout the day. There are still opportunities to modify throughout the day, although they're less prevalent than it was under the old system. If you're comfortable burning your battery down throughout the day, keeping an eye on your phone, and checking periodically if you can modify to a different time for your ride or if you can modify to a different ride are definitely keys to make sure you're maximizing the amount of rides that you can get in the park. Jungle Cruise, Tron, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Tiana, these are all the most popular rides. And take something like Jungle Cruise, it typically sells out of Lightning Lane slots fairly early in the day. Popular, especially when you're in the holidays, the Jingle Cruise time of year. You can see that sell out within an hour of park opening. So you'll want to look at some of the crowd calendar stuff to figure out how busy it's going to be, and then prioritize that handful of rides, Peter Pan, Mine Train, Jungle Cruise, those are ones that typically sell out quickly. Tron, again, you've got an opportunity to buy Lightning Lane individual pass there, get virtual queue as an option as well. But again, another ride that will typically fill up really quickly. The virtual queue sells out sometimes within seconds. So if that's a key ride for you and your family, an individual pass there is probably the smart play. For now, Big Thunder Mountain is down for another, I think they said mid 2026. So in that area of the park, Tiana is the big ride in that corner of the park. So in terms of, moving your way around the parks and where crowds are going to be, if you get over to Tiana, there's really nothing else to do on that side of the park that's close by. So I do think strategically, until Big Thunder Mountain is up in terms of how you would move around the park, I would prioritize when you're going to do Tiana and or Frontierland and sort of work your way through the rest of your day if Tiana is high on your list. The other rides that are over that side, Pirates of the Caribbean, are a little bit more flexible in terms of availability for Lightning Lanes versus, say, like a Tron or a Tiana. You already talked about Jungle Cruise. That one can be a tough one as well. So with that Thunder Mountain there to eat up some of the line, I think we're probably going to still see elevated lines over in that area of the park. Things like Haunted Mansion, tend to have shorter lines, and so those can be ones that you might want to try a standby pass for if you've already maxed out yourself on Lightning Lanes. It just depends. The couple of times that we've been there since Thunder closed, it feels like the Haunted Mansion standby queue has been longer than normal. I don't know if that's directly related to it, but I'm curious what you saw when you were there, if you remember what the Haunted Mansion queue was like.
Yeah, the Haunted Mansion queue is definitely long. But I don't know. I don't have as much of a frame of reference because it's been so many years. I just recently started going back to Disney World, and so I don't have as much historical data in my head to know if it's longer than usual. But it makes sense to me that it would be, since Big Thunder is down, and also a lot of the other ride queues in that area.
Yeah, it used to be that the standby line, so there's a few switchbacks for the standby line that run along the side of where the Liberty Bell Riverboat is. And so the standby line used to be contained in that area. Now you'll see it sort of spill out and sort of down towards the entrance to Liberty Bell. And that's a good sign that it's longer than normal. In my head, I always think about that ride before we saw the crowd surge to more like a 20 to 25 minute standby line. With that longer line, I'd say you're probably looking at 40 to 45 minutes. So that can be one of those ones where if you do early theme park entry and knock out, some of the stuff that's in Fantasyland, because it's so close there by, say, like Peter Pan, something like that, as the park is starting to open up more, that can be a good one to jump to before you head elsewhere in the parks. But some of that will depend on what you can grab for Lightning Lanes if you're on a Lightning Lane multi-pass. And Haunted Mansion is one of those ones that's generally available till later in the day. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we left out on Magic Kingdom strategy in terms of maximizing the day. Can you think of anything that I did not cover?
There's not anything else that I can think of as far as tips for getting through the Magic Kingdom. Definitely take advantage of the early entry. And like I said before, if you're there on a party day, since we are in party season right now, through the first of the year, I would recommend hitting Magic Kingdom on a party day.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Epcot. So Epcot is one of those parks that's in a bit of a transition. Test Track has just reopened. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is now located by one of the two entries to the park, where usually if you came in on the backside of Epcot, there wasn't a whole lot to do on that side of the park in terms of rides. And so you've got what I would say are four, really high-level feature attractions in that park. You've got Guardians of the Galaxy, you've got Frozen, you've got Remy, and you've got Test Track. And there are other rides, but you've got four things that sort of, can eat up the crowd, if you will, that sort of spread the lines out a little bit more. This, one of the things to think about here is you do have single rider lines available in Epcot, something you don't have in Magic Kingdom. I don't actually know if the single rider line came back up when Test Track reopened a few weeks ago. It's only been open a few weeks. You and I talked a little bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
It's there.
We've never done the single rider line at Remy's Ratatouille, so I don't have perspective on how long the single rider queue normally is. On Test Track, it was always a really reliable way to get through the line quickly. So single rider is definitely a key strategy there. I think this is one of those parks where, again, just personal opinion, if one of the four big rides isn't high on your list, then you start to get into, not sure it's worth paying for stuff. You can buy an individual pass to, say, Guardians of the Galaxy, if that's really important on your list, and then you can single rider the two others. So, Lightning Lane Multipass beyond that, can definitely be helpful for rides like Soarin' for sure. Mission Space is generally a ride that doesn't usually have super long lines. Spaceship Earth, I've seen those lines longer than they used to be. So that's one of the ones I would never think about using a Lightning Lane pass for in the past, but now I've seen those lines spike more than they used to be. Other rides like Figment and Living with the Land, those are just people eater rides, and they generally don't tend to get over like a 15 or a 20-minute wait. Same thing with the Gran Fiesta Three Caballeros in Mexico. So you'll see the pricing for Lightning Lane Multipass is cheaper in Epcot than it is in Magic Kingdom, and I think it's indicative of the fact that it's just a little bit less valuable. It's one of those parks that I think is like sort of an edge case for whether you'd buy Lightning Lane Multipass or not. The other thing I would say is what's important to ride for you should also focus where you'll arrive. So if Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is key for you, then Skyliner or walking over from, say, the Swan Dolphin or Beach Club, it makes sense using that entrance on the side versus something like Guardians of the Galaxy is located, very close to the main entrance at Epcot.
100%. Where you enter, what you want to ride the most depends on where you should enter the park for sure, and your strategy for navigating around the park. I would also say if your priority is riding rides, then definitely getting Lightning Lane is worth it. But if you also want to eat food while you're at Epcot, then maybe it's not as important for you. It depends on where your priorities are. I can also see a world where you are there to eat food, so you get Lightning Lane, knock out all of your Lightning Lanes, and between early entry standby and Lightning Lanes, you're able to get all of your rides done in the morning, and then you're spending the afternoon and evening walking around Epcot eating food, which is one of my favorite things to do when I'm at Epcot.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, that's a park where you can keep an eye on wait times and squeeze some food and other, exploring in between rides. You've got the ability to buy the individual Lightning Lane at Guardians, the single rider lines that we talked about. Guardians still has a virtual queue as well, so that's another opportunity to try and snag that. But a lot of Epcot, if rides is important to you, is going to be, focusing on getting into the park early and or hitting those standby lines if you're not willing to invest. Typically speaking, I haven't heard from anyone who said that they were sold out or locked out of an opportunity for Lightning Lane Multipass at Epcot. I'm sure it happens, but much less likely than Magic Kingdom, where I've consistently heard people who are like, gosh, I couldn't get the day or time I wanted for Tiana.
100%. I haven't heard that either. What I have heard is people complaining about the wait times for Tron, like Cycle Run, not Tron, but Test Track. I have heard people complaining about not being able to get, or the standby queue 60 minutes for that ride. Other than that, I haven't heard anyone complaining about not being able to get Lightning Lanes for any rides.
All right, well, let's pop over to Hollywood Studios. This is one of those parks that I'd say there's some debate about whether you should be thinking about, rope dropping the park. I'm a fan of rope dropping this park just because I think there are a number of really, important feature rides here. If you have a kid who's not interested in the full spectrum, maybe if they're not a Star Wars fan, or if they're not a Toy Story fan, or if they don't think that Tower of Terror is a big deal, maybe you would consider a different strategy than rope drop here. But there are just a number of key rides that you can hit at rope drop and knock them out, and it changes your strategy over the course of the day, because you got Slinky Dog Dash, Toy Story Mania, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, Millennium Falcon, Tower of Terror. These are all rides that usually sport longer queues, and you're not going to be able to grab Lightning Lane multi-passes for all of them. You're not going to be able to buy individual passes for all of them. You can get an individual pass for Rise of the Resistance, but you can't for others like Millennium Falcon. So being able to knock out one early in the day from a rope drop, I think is a really solid strategy.
100%. I have heard also that has been a single rider line come and go for Rise of the Resistance at
Yes.
Disney World. I don't know where that is right now, but I know that it does come and go. So you can't guarantee that it's going to be available, but ask for sure.
Yep, you definitely can. And that's one of those ones that when it is up and running, you have a little bit of a better shot of being able to be paired up with someone else that's in your group going through single rider, because it's more of a group of people, call it, 10 to 15 people that go into each pre-show. But the ride has so much capacity that it's definitely not so much demand, that there's not really much of a guarantee that you're going to get multiple people through single rider line all at once. This is one of those parks where you do have single rider options, definitely things to, definitely part of your strategy to consider. And some of that will also depend, again, on how many people are in your party and how much you want to be split up. Taking a step back for a second, I think, where before you had the, Batu land for Star Wars, you sort of had everybody sort of made a beeline for Toy Story Land. I think one of the nice things about the way the park opens now is you are going to split that crowd up between the two. And so that generally thins things out. I actually think, at least from what I've seen when people are going in the parks, this can actually be a great time to consider hitting Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, because I think people generally line up for the other two lands. And it's not that there isn't a bunch of people that go to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but I think it's been diminished since you've got both of these two separate paths for people to go down. This park also has the most single rider line opportunities. You've got, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, as Steph mentioned, you typically have Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, though that one's not a guarantee. And at least until it went away, Rock and Roll Roller Coaster was an opportunity for single rider. On Falcon, I think you and I talked about this a bit in the episode where you went coast to coast. Falcon is another ride where you can get two people through single rider, but you're likely going to be on a less desirable mission, if you will. So you've got pilots, gunners, and engineers are the three roles on Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Most people want to be pilot at least once, and so there are two pilots, two gunners, and two engineers. So what they do with single rider is if a group of people comes up and says, hey, we got two people here who want to be pilots, they're going to look for somebody from the single rider line and potentially two people from single rider line to fill in the spots. And so typically you're going to be an engineer. Every once in a while you'll be a gunner. So if it's important to ride together, single rider line can accommodate two people pretty regularly on Millennium Falcon. But if pilot is your goal, I would say highly unlikely that that's what you're going to get if you go through single rider line. They generally won't let you select what spot you're in if you're on single rider.
Great tips for sure. It's not a ride that I ride anymore. So twice was enough for me. I do get stuck on it. It's not worth it for me, but definitely great tips for going through that single ride and knowing that you can't pick your role.
It's a fun ride. We still love it. My son loves it. I totally get the making motion sickness. I would say it's one of those rides where I'm sure at some point in the near future I will start to experience a little bit of nausea from it. It's not quite Star Tours for me, which Star Tours is my absolute
heel.
nemesis.
Yeah.
One
thing I wanted to mention is I have seen people rope dropping Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I think if you're doing Lightning Lane and you're able to get a pass for Slinky Dog and some of those more desirable ones, that rope dropping Mickey and Minnie is a great strategy for sure. You can get through it usually pretty quick, and since it's such a big people mover and they move so quickly, you are able to get through it and still have time to do some other things.
Yep, I agree. You've got I think 4 rows that fit, 4 or 5 people per row.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a lot of people.
It is. Yeah. They move the cars through pretty quickly. It's an easy loading ride. So it is absolutely a people eater. And, I think like with Slinky Dog and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway popularity, it's not that Toy Story Mania isn't popular. It's just a lot of people stream by it based on where they moved the entrance to a handful of years ago. And so I would say, typically speaking, you've got a better shot of either a Lightning Lane multi-pass later in the day or a shorter standby queue on Toy Story Mania than you would at Disneyland. And definitely
Yes.
for, compared to, say, Slinky Dog or Runaway Railway. I think when you get to the middle of the day with Runaway Railway, because it's right there front and center in the park, it attracts a lot of people, and the line the queue will spill out to the right of the theater, outdoors, and it can be quite long. It's also mostly out in the sun when you're outside, so at the key times of year where it's disgusting and humid in Orlando, it's certainly a less fun queue to be in.
100%. Yeah, I've been really surprised actually. You mentioned how the difference between Toy Story Mania at Disney World versus Disneyland. I've been surprised at how short the lines are for Toy Story Mania at Disney World versus
Yeah.
Disneyland, because it quickly can get to a 45-minute wait at Disneyland. Usually every single day you're looking at 45 minutes, sometimes 30. But on a good day, you get 30. But Disney World, I've 5 minutes. I've been able to jump on it and rewrite it again in the morning. It's a lot shorter.
Yeah, it's still one of my favorite rides, but I think
Yes.
Slinky Dog being
Yeah.
so close by where it is, and you can all, like, as you come around the bend, people almost sort of miss it. So while the lightning lanes sell out, reasonably quickly, probably be after Runaway Railway, but still, a reasonable amount of time through the day. The standby line can be a good, jump in there and not have to wait 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great tip.
All right, let's finish up with Animal Kingdom. This is the forgotten park of the four parks, I think, when it comes to strategy. Like Epcot, a lot of strolling in this park if you want it. I think it's a great park to look around and explore in. Maybe not quite as food diverse as Epcot, but still some really good options with Yak and Yeti and stuff like that. As far as ride strategy goes, this one's a little bit more straightforward. So first off, if you want to buy a Lightning Lane individual pass, you're looking at Avatar Flight of Passage. Like that's your choice. The thing about rope dropping this park, I actually like rope dropping this park because it means you can get to a second park in that same day, because I don't think at most days Animal Kingdom is a full day park. And so if you have the ability to park hop, one of my favorite strategies is rope dropping Animal Kingdom, get in, get it done, and then hop over to Epcot and feed your way through the day and look at what lines are short. So you can pair those two up in a day. And I think depending on whether you want to buy Flight of Passage, or if something like the Safari or Expedition Everest are important to you, that'll dictate where you're going to go at rope drop for this park. While some of the people leaders like Dinosaur are being refurbished right now, that ride's turning into an Indiana Jones ride, and Primeval Whirl, or Primeval Hurl as I used to call it, because that ride really made me sick.
I love that
are
ride.
Gone. What's that?
I loved that ride, and it didn't
Oh,
make me
God.
sick. Isn't that weird?
I hated it. Oh, I hated it. Every time we did a ride challenge, that was one of my least favorite rides, if not my least favorite. But it's one of those things where even those people leaders are gone, because of a hike between some of the rides, and because some of them are longer, like Rafiki's train ride and the Safari, you can make your way around the park, and the standby lines aren't horrible, but you're going to have some transit time as you get in between the different rides. The only single rider line in Animal Kingdom is Expedition Everest, which one of my favorite coasters. So that's a quick way to knock out Expedition Everest if you started on the other side of the park, say with like Avatar or Safari. And then I just think the other rides, I don't know. I mean, it's just me personally. Like Navi River Journey is a fine ride. People get down into that whole Avatar land, they see that Flight of Passage is real long, and they go stand in the standby line at Navi, and so it just tends to take a lot longer than I would normally want to wait for that ride. It's a floating, meandering ride, which is fine, but it's usually a longer line than what I want to wait, and it's not something that I really want to try and burn lightning lanes for when you have other rides like the Safari that can have much longer wait times.
100%. I agree that you can get through all of the rides at Animal Kingdom in half a day easily. One thing that I do love about Animal Kingdom, though, is the food. I think they have really good food options there. And honestly,
Agree.
some of the best food in Disney World can be found at Animal Kingdom. So I sometimes will park hop just to go eat at Animal Kingdom as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great park to eat in, and I think if you're going to be there for if you're going to be there for rope drop, then you've got a great shot to finish up most of what you're going to do in the day, and then go hit one of the great restaurants. As I mentioned earlier, big Yak and Yeti fan. I'm curious what your favorites are in Animal Kingdom. I've done Tiffin's, I've done Satuli Canteen. I'd say Yak and Yeti and Tiffin's are probably two of my favorites.
Yeah, surprisingly, this might surprise you, Bengal barbecue is one of my favorites. The macaroni and cheese with the pulled pork on top is amazing, and I have to eat it every time I go. I also do love Yak and Yeti. I've eaten at Tiffin's. It's great as well. It's on the higher end of restaurants and dining at Disney World. So yeah, there's a lot at Disney World to eat. And down in Avatar, there's a little stand there that has the pineapple. They're like egg rolls with pineapple, yummy stuff inside of them, cream cheese. So I can't think of what they're called right now, but one of my favorite treats at Disney World as well.
Yeah, my Thule canteen that's down there is usually a pretty busy choice, so getting some of the alternative snacks can be a good way to get out of there quickly. I also, if you can't get into Yak and Yeti's, they do have a counter service, quick service option as well, so that can be another way to get not the full menu, to be clear, but a decent
100%.
number of the things on the menu.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely not a full day park. You'll see that reflected in the Lightning Lane pricing. Typically speaking, it's going to be 50 to 60% of what Magic Kingdom is on any given day. So something to consider, that it may actually be worth it because it's so much lower in price. So
yeah, one thing to mention too, I think, is that if seeing the animals is important to you, a lot of times when my kids were younger, that was really important, that we made sure that we were able to see the animals when we went on the safari. And so hitting that ride first thing in the morning is what I would recommend, or as late in the evening as you can, so that you're not in the heat of the day, because most of the time you'll miss most of the animals if it's in the heat of the day.
Yeah, and one thing that's been on our bucket list for a while that I haven't had an opportunity to do yet, there are two different nighttime safari options. They're paid options that you can do from Animal Kingdom Lodge. And so if you do like the safari, I agree 100% with what you said about trying to hit it early or late in the day for more activity animals. We've wanted to do the nighttime ones as well, and it's never worked for our schedule, but that's pretty high on my list.
We should do it then sometime when we're there.
Yeah.
And report back.
Well, what did we miss? I think we hit all four parks. Trying to figure out if there's anything else that we need to follow up with to tell folks how to get the best shot at hitting all the rides they want to ride.
The one other thing that I've often wondered about doing, and I don't know if you've done this, is the paid after hours at the parks, where you can pay an additional, it's like $150. And you can go to the parks for just after hours, like they do it at Animal Kingdom quite a bit. I just haven't ever done that, but I've thought about doing it with my youngest, who is on the spectrum, and the heat is hard for her. And I've wondered about maybe doing that for her, because with the time zone difference being on Pacific time, we could head down there, hit all of the rides at night. Do you know anyone that's done that, Ed?
The last time we did it would have been probably right when the parks reopened after COVID, actually, or maybe it was pre-COVID, but we've done it at Magic Kingdom and we've done it at Hollywood Studios. I'm torn on these. I think, at least for us, where, back when we were going quite a bit, it was worth it because we could, using your example, it was $150, $175 for Hollywood Studios after hours. We rode Slinky Dog, 4 or 5 times, and you could ride anything you wanted. There were no problem with lines. So I definitely think you can get the value out of it, but it also is pricey for a family of 4. It's usually more than a park ticket for the day. I definitely think it's worth considering. I would say that during the hottest times of year, I would put more value on it than in the cooler months, just because Disney World is so miserable in the middle of the day that even if you're able to keep moving and you don't need to get out of the sun, you're just moving slower. You're hydrating like crazy. You feel lethargic. You're sweating like crazy. So, the couple times that we've done it, we're in some of those hotter seasons where it was fine being in the parks that late at night. It wasn't cool and refreshing, but it wasn't miserable. So if you're going to do it, I would recommend doing it at a time of year where the heat might take away part of your day.
That's exactly what I've been thinking about doing. And then spending the daytime in the resort where normally we aren't spending as much day enjoying the resort, especially if we're staying on site, being able to enjoy the pool or some things like that. And then doing the park after hours at night when it's cooler. And I would probably forego any type of a park pass. We'll see. We'll see if I end up doing it. But because it is, like you said, it is a lot more expensive than a day pass, or even like doing a week, hitting each port. If I were to do 4 parks, it would be a lot more expensive than even getting a week pass, I think, or maybe about the same. But I might do that one time as a strategy just to test it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I would be less likely to want to do it at a park like Epcot, and we haven't done it there. I just feel like there's less to do that you couldn't get access to during the day with shorter lines. So that one's a little bit more problematic, I think, from a pricing standpoint, but definitely a fan for Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the advice.
All right, well, that's a wrap on Disney World ride strategies. Feel free to leave us a comment, ask us any questions. We're happy to fill in any of the blanks. Steph, I'm looking forward to you getting back out on the road into the parks.
Me too.
And catching you at a castle sometime soon.
Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Catch us at the castle.